6:30 to order. I will ask the city clerk to record our attendance here this evening, and certainly welcome those present to our public hearing, both in council chambers and joining us online. And also noting for the clerk's benefit that no councillors are joining us remotely here, and apologies or regrets from Councillor Ross Robinson and Mayor Adam Lorden. The purpose of our public hearing here this evening is the proposed amendments are to A, amend the Schedule A, future land use map of the City of Miramichi Municipal Development Plan, bylaw number 109, to change the designation from industrial to residential, and B, amend the schedule zoning map of the City of Miramichi zoning bylaw number 110, to change the zoning designation from business light industrial, BLI short form, to medium density, BR4. For an approximately 3-acre portion of the subject property described as PID 403-99016, located at 381 Beaverbrook Road in the City of Miramichi, to allow the construction of a 2-story, 24-unit apartment building on the property. This public hearing respecting these proposed bylaws is required under Section 111 of the Community Planning Act. The purpose of this public hearing is for City Council to consider objections to the proposed bylaws, and to hear persons who wish to speak for or against said written objections, which we'll get to later on our agenda. At this point in time, I'll call upon Nick Odette, Planning Services Manager, Greater Miramichi Regional Service Commission, to introduce the proposed amendments. Mr. Odette.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Quinn. Okay, so these amendments, first one is required to change the designation under the municipal plan from industrial to residential. As well, the applicant has requested to amend the city zoning bylaw designation from BLI, business light industrial, to medium density BR4. This is to permit a 24-unit apartment building on a 3-acre portion of the subject property. Under the current zoning, this proposed use is not permitted. Overview of the proposed use. The property owner is Blair Can Signs. The applicant is the owner of that company, Curby O'Donnell. Subject property is outlined in blue on this aerial imagery. The area not subject to these amendments is highlighted in white. So that's an approximately 1,800 square meter portion that is to remain unchanged. This is a different view looking to the west, with the existing buildings in the front in that 1,800 square meter portion, again to remain unchanged. So subject property, it's 4.3 acres in area. The amendments are to cover an approximately 3-acre portion. Existing municipal services are available to the property from Beaverbrook Road, along with access. Currently on the property there are 2 buildings. One is to be demolished or removed from the property, while one is to be kept. As proposed, the applicant again is going to be proposing to build a 2-story, 24-unit apartment building. Access is proposed to the apartment building via an 8-meter wide, 51.2 meter long private driveway. We've clarified with the applicant that this proposed driveway would run to the right or immediately to the east of the existing larger storage building on the property. The existing mobile home that's just to the right of this current building would be removed or demolished. The apartment building would be approximately 176 feet long with 2 stories, and each unit would be approximately 1,000 square feet. They are 2-bedroom units. They would include all the typical amenities like balconies, living rooms, dining areas, kitchens, storage rooms, washrooms, and again 2 bedrooms per unit. The applicant's preliminary site plan shows 26 outdoor parking spaces, which meets the zoning requirement. Right now there's no barrier-free parking spaces shown on the site plan, but 2 would be required based on staff analysis. Looking at the site plan and renderings, landscaping would be provided on the property, but not shown on the site plan, sorry. As per the mapping, however, there is existing dense vegetation around the subject property, which should be retained. Any development would be subject to the R4 and other zoning regulations if these amendments pass through council. Take you through some photos now of current conditions on the subject property and immediate area. These photos were taken in the late spring, early summer. So this is a view of the current development on the subject property. The larger storage building is on the left for the sign business. The smaller mobile home is on the right, which will be demolished. The access road to the apartments would pretty much be right through this driveway and immediately to the right of that larger building. This is a residence located across the road to the southeast of the property, just to give you a feel of the character of the immediate area. This property is immediately to the left of the subject property. Service master location as well as adjacent to the subject property, so that's a light industrial commercial use. Further down Beaverbrook Road, these are some residences in the area. The one on the right there actually does abut a portion of the subject property. This is another example of a different use in the area, so an institutional use, the River of Life Church nearby, and Carrefour Beausoleil, which is about half a kilometer southwest of the subject property. Taking a look now at the applicant's site plan shown on the screen. It does lack some detail, but it gives you a brief overview of the concept at least. You can see it's set back quite far from the road just because of the layout and the nature of the property. It's well set back from all property lines, and it should be noted as well that there is a unmapped watercourse located on the east side of the property. These are some elevation plans prepared by the applicant. Shows you the two-story nature of the building with the balconies as proposed. As well, some floor plans were submitted by the applicant. Not easy to see them on the screen, but they are included in the staff report. And a rendering that the applicant put together. Looking at the planning considerations now, currently the property is designated industrial under Schedule A of the plan. Schedule B designates it as a mixed residential area, so that's under the residential hierarchy and designations of the plan. Schedule D, which is the road hierarchy, designates Beaverbrook as a local road in this area. Overall, the residential goals and policies of the municipal plan provide support for residential developments and support the transition of this property to residential, as it strives to have an adequate supply of residential land designations. The plan also works to ensure the utilization of land that maximizes existing infrastructure and services like water and sewer, as well as working to promote an increasing diversity of housing options, including rental units. The proposal would provide another option for higher density living in the area, as the plan encourages developers to provide alternatives to traditional single home development that can better meet the needs of varying demographics within the region. Looking at the zoning bylaw analysis now, so again, the current zoning, business light industrial, does not permit any residential uses. The proposed use is, however, permitted under the medium density BR4 zone as requested by the applicant. The proposed amendments are only for a portion of the property. It was initially thought that the applicant wished to leave the existing building as is. There was some indications when I spoke to him recently that he didn't care whether it was rezoned or not. So I'll leave that up to council. But as proposed in these amendments, as presented to the PRAC and to council earlier, it was proposed to have split zoning on the property. The owner did clarify as well that he will not be continuing the business use of this building. It will only be used for personal storage and storage of construction supplies while the building is being built. The zoning regulations under the R4 zone and in the general portion of the zoning bylaw can provide some certainty about the future development. The zoning bylaw regulates factors such as setbacks, lot coverage, and that would provide some certainty with regard to how the development occurs and the impact that it would have on adjacent properties. So once again, there is an existing watercourse that appears to cross through the subject area of the subject property along the east side. Based on the available web mapping from the Department of Environment and Department of Natural Resources, the proposed work and alterations on the site would certainly encroach within 30 meters of this watercourse. Although the applicant's site plan is inconsistent with this, so we would need to see a more detailed analysis if a permit was applied for. The applicant is required to obtain a wetland and watercourse alteration permit from the Department of Environment, and in fact has already begun the consultation and application process. So after the plan amendment and rezoning application is heard by City Council, there is no mechanism to add additional terms and conditions that are not regulated by the zoning bylaw. If Council wishes to provide more immediate and long-term certainty with regard to the proposed rezoning and plan amendment, address potential incompatibility with surrounding uses, or restrict or relax the R4 development rules, they can consider using Section 59 of the Community Planning Act to place additional terms and conditions on the use or development. Looking at the surrounding neighborhood, the rear or north of the property backs onto Beaverbrook Boulevard, also known as Route 430. This is designated as a secondary regional route. There's no access proposed to the development from this highway, unlikely that there ever would be, granted from the province. There's a variety of zones in the area. Shown in the photos, there are some mixed uses in the area, although it is predominantly residential. The subject property is surrounded by residential uses, but there are some institutional uses in the wider area. The properties behind the rear of the subject property are vacant, with partial coverage by the mapped watercourse that also crosses through the subject property. There are some businesses within the wider area, including Service Master and some other businesses on Newcastle Boulevard. Staff analysis is that this proposed use would certainly present an intensity in traffic, noise, and overall activity that would surpass existing conditions in the area. The existing buildings on the property are a mix of low impact residential and commercial, industrial and commercial uses. Residents in the area might have particular concerns with with this new use being more intense in different ways. And specific impacts are anticipated to be identified tonight at the public hearing. As always, we reached out to various departments and agencies for comment on this application. City of Miramichi Department of Engineering and Department of Public Works confirmed that the site does have access to water and sewer services. The applicant needs to determine the sizes and grades of laterals. The cost of any new services would be determined later. The applicant would need to provide a drainage plan with a net zero increase in post-construction flow. There's an existing drainage ditch and easement associated with the property and should be included on a future site plan. And there are no issues with access. The Department of Environment stated that all watercourses and wetlands that meet the definition under the Clean Water Act are regulated, whether they are mapped or not, and there is a strong likelihood of unmapped regulated features on the property. It is recommended that a qualified consultant confirm the presence on the ground prior to approval of the plan. However, in this case, there's already a WAWA application, and the applicant would be notified through the WAWA review. And if this application is approved through the rezoning plan amendment process, planning services staff would seek comment from other departments and agencies later on when a building permit application is received as needed. So the views of the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee, these were passed by resolution at the meeting held June 22nd, 2023. Pursuant to Section 110(1) of the Community Planning Act, it is the view of the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee of the Greater Miramichi Regional Service Commission that the City of Miramichi amend Schedule A, future land use map of the City of Miramichi Municipal Plan, Bylaw 109, to change the designation from industrial to residential. And 2, Schedule A, the zoning map of the City of Miramichi zoning bylaw, Bylaw 110, to change the zoning from business light industrial, BLI, to medium density B, R4, for a 3-acre portion of the subject property described as PID 40399016, located at 381 Beaverbrook Road in the City of Miramichi, to enable the construction of a 2-story, 24-unit apartment building, and that such approval be conditional upon and subject to the following terms and conditions pursuant to Section 59 of the Community Planning Act. Condition 1, that 3 meters of landscaped open space, including screening, be provided and maintained along the lot lines bordering adjacent PID 40452872. This must be completed no later than 1 year from the date of the granting of a building permit. 2, that 2 barrier-free parking spaces be provided amongst the exterior parking as proposed by the applicant. The barrier-free spaces must comply with the Barrier-Free Design Building Code regulation under the Building Code Administration Act. And 3, this condition was added by the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee, that council investigate the precedent being set for potentially allowing multiple designations on one property and not subdividing the subject portion of the property. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Dett, for your presentation this evening. Moving on to our agenda, number 5, we have 2 letters of objection received. I will now ask the city clerk to read said letters, as they will now form part of the record and considerations of council.
The letter is dated August 25th, 2023. Dear Ms. Ripley and City of Miramichi Mayor and Councilors, thank you for the notification of proposed amendments to bylaw number 109 and number 110 as submitted by applicant Curby O'Donnell, Blair Can Signs Limited, changing the zoning from business light industrial to medium density B, R4, to allow the construction of a 2-story, 24-unit apartment building. We emphatically oppose this, and the reasons are as follows. A, this road was not designed for the capacity of vehicles that would come with this complex. There could potentially be another 48 vehicles coming with the renters of this property, increasing the burden on this road that was designed for a limited number of homeowners. Carrefour Beausoleil attracts a lot of traffic on this road, already taking into consideration school hours, after-school events, and the Frico Cafe. B, this road/neighborhood, while being zoned for light industrial and business, is essentially a single-family dwelling road. The majority of the dwellings are homes. The atmosphere is familial. People walk and bike along the road, and introducing this apartment complex will pose a safety risk to those walking, as there are no sidewalks, and take away from the community feel. Miramichi is striving to provide high-quality family recreation and outdoor living. Adding traffic and a transient population to this area will certainly take away from this neighborhood. C, the history of other properties managed by this business is questionable. Other properties owned and managed have a reputation and are recognized as being unkept, poorly maintained, and an eyesore. The sign business at 381 Beaverbrook Road was tidied up after the notification letter regarding zoning came out. Besides other unkept properties, our understanding is that buildings on Cole Crescent are owned and managed by this business/owner. On June 20th, 2019, tenants at 15 Cole Crescent property were required to leave with 4 hours notice due to the fire marshal deeming the property unsafe, as per CBC News. Subsequently, July 21st, 2019, a fire at 5 Cole Crescent left 50 people homeless, per CTV News. The area, unfortunately, also has a reputation for illicit drug use. It is our concern that since this is the history of how this business is run, that this too shall happen in the neighborhood. We do not feel the need to expand on this, as it speaks for itself. We acknowledge affordable housing is much needed in our city. We also feel there are more suitable areas for said project. We feel the City of Miramichi should complete more vetting of the property owner before making a decision on the proposed amendment. We have a few beautiful neighborhoods, in the city, and we would like to keep it that way. Thank you for your consideration and attention. We feel confident you will make an informed decision. Yours truly, Tambry McDonald, Hazel Francis, Nancy Roy, Gary Roy, Richard Gerard, Therese Gerard, Tim Martin, Joanne Graham, Gordon Graham, Mark Schofield, Angie Schofield, Evan Schofield, Barry Amos, Glenn Black, Leslie Flett, Hope Allison, Barbara Flett, Richard Flett, Sarah Burnbaugh, Melvin Richardson, Cynthia Richardson, Brenda McEwen, Stephen Scott, Trina Sutherland, Drew Hunter, and Tanya Quigley. I also received a second letter, which is essentially the same, except for the last paragraph, which reads as follows. We acknowledge affordable housing is much needed in our city. We also feel there are more suitable areas for said project and perhaps better management. Thank you for your consideration and attention. We feel confident you will make an informed decision. Sincerely, Blair McDonald and Tambry McDonald.
Okay, very good. Thank you to Clerk Rhonda Ripley. Moving on to agenda item number 6. I will ask, is the applicant present here this evening? And seeing that the applicant is not here, we'll move on to our next order of business, which is opening the floor to anyone who wishes to speak for or against the written objection received by the city clerk. And noting, thank you to the letter from Blair and Tambry, that it opens the door for everyone to speak. And I would just ask, because we're forming official record and considerations of council, that you take the time to introduce yourself as you work your way to the podium. And Director McTavish, I'll just designate you to make sure that microphone is on for the folks. And anyone who wants to speak can come up to the podium now. And again, noting, please introduce yourself.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you this evening?
Good evening. Great.
Curby O'Donnell was...
Need your name, please. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Nope.
My name is Karen McGrath-Sickles.
Karen, thank you.
Curby O'Donnell was my landlord. I have pictures here. I don't have a Samsung plug-in. That he sold this building that I lived in for 8 years that he did not take care of, that if you wouldn't mind that I could show everybody these pictures. He doesn't fix anything. He doesn't care what you think. I had a massive heart attack last year. I'm epileptic. There's wires. I can't explain it. I can show you if you would allow me just to come around and show you the pictures. This man is not capable of being a decent human being. If you would allow me to show you these pictures, please.
So, Karen, I think, and I appreciate, thank you for being here, firstly. I think the best way to do that would be, is it possible upon your return to home, you email those to our clerk and she can distribute to us to form part of our record?
I showed your clerk one day.
Understanding, but the rest of us haven't seen it, so the quickest way.
I don't know how to email, sir.
Okay.
I'm lucky I know how to use this phone. I just showed this gentleman over here. I had public health in. I had Corey Shattuck in, and he said it was up to code. I called the ombudsman. I called everybody. I'm epileptic, everything, and I can't get no help from nobody. And I need you to see these pictures to see what kind of a slumlord Curby O'Donnell is. if you don't mind, sir.
Be Mayor,
Councillor King,
if I may,
please.
I wonder, ma'am, if you could wait after the meeting and talk to Mrs. Ripley,
Absolutely,
and she would show you how to transfer them to her.
absolutely.
Okay.
Because these wires,
Yes. Appreciate it. Thank you.
yeah, I greatly appreciate the time.
Great, Karen. Thank you. All right, and with that, is there anyone else who wishes to address council here this evening? This is the opportunity. Again, noting, please introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name's Tambry McDonald, Deputy Mayor, City Councilors, fellow citizens. Yeah, for sure, it's a concern. I suppose like the biggest parts of our concern in the neighborhood is the history of the maintenance of other properties owned by said business. We certainly understand and agree that affordable housing needs to come to Miramichi. We would love to see further development. We absolutely need them. However, I just don't know that this particular route is the way to go. I don't know what the target population is for this housing. Is it low rentals? Is it seniors? Is it, open for whatever? And I think probably all of us are familiar with the issues that have taken place at Cole Crescent. Certainly Mr. Cummings would be quite familiar with that. It's very disheartening. The people that live there need a lot of help, but certainly the landlord doesn't make it easy for them to get the help that they need. So I hope you take into consideration the history of what's happened with other properties. It's difficult as a citizen to kind of pinpoint other properties that are owned by another business. There's lots of rumors and innuendo, which I'm not going to take here because, there's lots of rumors and innuendo. But certainly the anecdotal history is less than stellar. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Tambry. Anyone else, wish to address council here this evening?
My name's Leslie Flett. I live back on Beaverbrook Road. And my concern is pretty well what's already been said, but I guess I have a little concern. This council, this mayor, the previous councils, his property has been a mess for quite some time. And I've never seen anything or heard tell of anything where somebody was going to try to clean it up. And maybe there was something. Maybe there was things said to him or letters sent to him. I don't know exactly what was sent, but I just know it's been a mess pretty well forever. And I guess it makes me nervous if this council and previous councils didn't take action, didn't try to do anything to I guess, direct him or ask him to clean up and everything. It makes me pretty nervous for him to put another building and have a lot more people. And yes, I do believe the traffic is going to hurt us. It's because that's a through fare from off of Beaverbrook Road. There's a fair bit of traffic there now. And you put another 24 units on there, going back and forth, and trust me, there's a lot of people walk that, dogs, kids, bicycles, everything. I don't know how he's going to get it past. I work in construction. I don't know how you're going to get a 30-meter right-of-way around his book, so I don't know what the story is going to be on that, but I'm very nervous of what's going to come of this. And again, I certainly want somebody to explain to me how, after all these years, they're going to control what he does and how he maintains the building, and I don't suppose he'll have any control over the people that stay there, and hopefully he would get good people, but it's he just hasn't shown a lot of effort, I guess, to clean up any of the messes he's had. And in my opinion, I know of different properties he's had, and he's never cleaned it up, at least for quite a while. He's let it go, like a building that burns, he'd wait for 5 or 10 years. He hasn't shown enough responsibility, I guess, that I feel safe and allowing him to be able to put this building there. And again, I guess my word is I would certainly hope if for some reason or other you decide to do that, you would stay on top and make sure he did it with some respect to the rest of us. So that's all.
Very good, Les. Thank you. Anyone else wish to address this evening? To the podium, please.
I'm Blair McDonald. I live at 360. I don't know the person personally, but in what's come forth and the stuff that I've seen on the internet, I'm not very impressed at how he treats other people, and I'm not very impressed at how he's kept his business. And there's several other properties, we all know about that, and it's down the road that I'm worried about 4 years, 3 years, 5 years. It's going to look just like Cole Crescent, and the crime will be there. And my kids, who I plan to give my house to, will not be able to stay in that house because of that development. That's all I got.
Okay, very good, Blair. Thank you. Are there any other folks who wish to address council this evening?
Deputy Mayor, Councillors, Gary Roy, resident of Beaverbrook Road. Just what Les and the rest of them all said, reiterate and beat a horse to death, but I was in a bad accident at the end of that street. And there's enough traffic there now. You get 24 more units at the mouth of that street. We ain't got the infrastructure for it. Somebody else is going to get hurt. Maybe they'd be lucky to get hurt. If they get killed, it'll be a different story. There's been several accidents. I know Mr. Harris and Mr. Johnson and probably several others know about the accidents were there. So I'm just saying that to change this here to, sure, it's great. We do need development, but nothing to say once they get that changed that they can just put whatever they want up there. Picture's nice, but I'm just saying. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gary. Is there anyone else who wishes to address council this evening? All right, very good. And seeing that there are no further addresses from the public, we'll move on to questions from council colleagues. And I suspect there are a few here this evening, and I'll open the floor to anyone who wishes to speak first. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, I'll open the floor on this, I guess where I'm close to it. Just a few questions that came from the public, and thanks everyone for coming out. It's kind of like a neighborhood party, so it's good to see everyone together. I know the question came up about affordable housing or low rent rentals, or I don't know, Nick or Jeff, if one of you guys can elaborate on that, because most time when we get these presentations, we do know what's going in the apartments, and that hasn't been spoken yet, so just let the people know what you guys know, if we know anything.
Yeah, so with this development, there's really no indication from the applicant about what would go into the building. Just market rentals is my understanding, but that could be, a wide spectrum of affordability. So these are 2-bedroom units. They're relatively large at 1,000 square feet each, but those details could change. But yeah, as far as I know, there haven't really been any discussions about, accessing funding programs or things like that. So can't really say at this point what the target audience would be.
Thanks, Nick. I mean, a lot of the time we do hear what the targeted audience is, I guess, when we do get to apartments and stuff. So it'd be nice to know that going forward. I know, I'll call him Mr. Flat. He brought up about the building back there, the sign building. I'll just let the clerk maybe elaborate on that, what took place this afternoon, just for everyone to know in the neighborhood.
So this afternoon, our bylaw enforcement officer actually posted a notice to comply for a cleanup of the property. It was a coincidence that it happened to be on the same day as this hearing, but there is a notice to comply that has been issued for the cleanup of 381 Beaverbrook Road. And
I know this, I think that has happened before, and I know, one of my old buddies pushed that for quite a few years. So, you know, it's good to hear that it is there today, but it's still, at the end of the day, the said person has to comply with the bylaw officers now. Obviously, they can appeal or whatever, and it is a process for our city clerk at the time. And some of these processes do take time, but they shouldn't take 10 years, and I do agree with Mr. Fly, what he said on that. And, you know, the letters, the petition, I know, you know, a lot of these did a lot of work. It's great to see. It's great to have the comments out here tonight. It gives council a better idea of what it is for that neighborhood, so I appreciate that. And I presume it's back on September 12th, and that time, I guess, council will be making the decision. But thanks, everyone, for coming tonight and with the presentations.
All right, very good, Councillor Harris. Nick, I guess I'll ask you to just stay at the podium. I suspect there are other questions that will probably be directed at you. Councillor King.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Nick, on the question, the road, who's responsible? Would he have to build a new road there, or what?
So that would just be,
I'm just wondering,
that would just be looked at as a private driveway, just like any other. It would have to be built and maintained by the developer. I'm assuming there would have to be potentially a developer's agreement with the city for the installation of services. But that would be, that'd be down the line. But either way, it's the developer's responsibility as proposed, and no intention of making this a public road, private road. It's just a driveway like any other. Yeah.
now, another question, if I may.
Please.
Deputy Mayor. On the water course, does he have to go to an environment for that section, period?
Yeah, so, and he already has started discussions with the Source and Surface Water Management branch of Department of Environment. They're the ones that issue Wawa permits, so anytime you're doing any land alteration, not just construction within 30 meters of a water course, whether it's a mapped water course that shows up on GONB or our staff mapping, or it's just a wet area that hasn't been mapped yet. Anytime that happens, a developer or property owner needs to go to Department of Environment to get a permit for that. So whether it's just clearing or putting in fill, whatever it is, it all needs a permit through them.
Another one to maybe Mrs. Ripley. Ms. Ripley, on the notice, how much time does he have to comply on that situation?
As per legislation, he would have 30 days to comply.
And after 30 days, what happens?
During that 30 days, he can do a notice of appeal to council if he objects to what is contained in the notice. After that, we would, if he does not comply, the city would then go ahead and clean the property up and charge the bill back to the property owner.
Or if I may,
Actually, we don't charge it back to the taxes. What would happen is we would try to collect from the property owner. If the property owner does not pay the city, then the city goes to the province of New Brunswick, and usually, historically, has been reimbursed by the province, who then applies it to his tax bill.
one more, if I may, Deputy Mayor. Nick, you said that, if I read you correctly, did you say he didn't care if he got the changes in the bylaw for the building's place?
When I was speaking with the applicant a few weeks ago for clarification on the existing development on the property, he indicated that actually that area didn't need to be left as is. It could be included in the rezoning. Because he's not going to be using it for the business, it doesn't have to remain industrial. That being said, it's already gone through the PRAC and the public presentation with that detail in there. But if council wanted to consider changing it, there is a process to follow for that.
But he doesn't care, really, from what he said. If I didn't catch the whole thing.
No,
Nick
can I
said.
just clarify for Councillor King? He doesn't, my understanding from Mr. Odette is that currently he has asked for part of the property to not be rezoned where his business is, and I think he indicated that he didn't care if council left it as one total rezoning or kept it as the separate rezoning.
Yep,
Oh, sorry, I didn't have my microphone. Is that your interpretation as well?
that's correct, yeah. He, essentially, he said it doesn't need to be left as is, it could be rezoned.
Okay. Very good. Councillor King? Good. Councillor Summers?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Quinn. I don't particularly have any questions for anybody present here this evening. I would like to thank the folks that are in attendance that came forward with their objections. I've been through a number of these similar scenarios. I know they're all different considering the circumstances. But in the 6.5 years I've sat here, I've seen this scene, I guess I'll call it, play out a number of times. And I know that it's not mandatory for the applicant to be present at these public hearings. But I think it's a very important part of the process, and the folks that are here to object certainly made an effort to be here this evening and brought forth their concerns. And I guess what I'm getting at is it speaks volumes to me, regardless of what this application is for, that the applicant himself is not present here this evening. I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Microphone is very good, Councillor Summers. I was going to make that note myself. It is always concerning in moments like this that the applicant is not here to address the concerns of either ourselves or the gathered public. So I share that concern.
Just if I can follow up on that just briefly. For example, Councillor Harris, I thought, had a very legitimate question, and he fired it out there, but the applicant's not here to answer said question. Right? So, I mean, if I'm sitting in their chairs and that question can't be answered, I 100% understand where they're coming from. Thanks.
Yep. Very good. Thank you. Good point. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you.
Sam, your mic, please. Drag it towards you. There we go. Thank you.
I don't need the mic, but I'll use it anyway. Thank you, Nick, and thank you for everyone for coming out this evening. And for those that took the time to write the letters. I'll speak for myself subjectively in that I make my decisions based on factual information that leads me to be able to discern a logical decision for the dynamics of certain situations and past precedent as they exist in the here and now. With that having been said, Nick, is there not a school in close proximity to said property that is being considered for rezoning?
School, sorry?
Carrefour Beausoleil.
It's located close to this property, yes. Yeah.
It's located close to the property?
It is, yeah. About,
it is. Okay,
500
thank you.
meters away. Sorry, yeah.
Right, 500 meters?
Yeah.
Great. Secondly, you had also alluded to the fact that with the development, there would invariably be an increase in traffic. Is that correct?
That would be staff's assumption, for sure, yeah.
Staff's interpretation?
Yep.
Of that situation with the new building? Deputy, through the chair to the Deputy Chief of Police, Mr. Cummings. Can you validate the concerns expressed by the residents here this evening that there have indeed been traffic accidents in the vicinity of that area over the last couple of years, and perhaps moving violations with your traffic sector in the municipal police department on that road?
Through the chair to Councillor Johnson, without being able to quote numbers, the answer is yes.
Thank you, Deputy. So we have a school in close proximity with the validation of concerns in terms of specifically related to traffic accidents and or speeding violations. Nick, did you also state in your presentation that there's no sidewalk on said road in the immediate vicinity of the school and said property?
No, that wasn't included in the presentation, but I believe that would be correct. Potentially the Director of Engineering or Public Works could confirm that.
Thank you. I will direct that question through the chair to the Director of Public Works. Is there a sidewalk in that location?
No, presently there's no defined defined sidewalk in that area.
So there's no sidewalk. Okay, thank you. No further questions, and thank you for the time for the presentation.
Okay, very good, Councillor Johnson. Thank you. Councillor DePlacy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess a bit of a follow-up too, and certainly for the folks that presented today, your concerns were heard, but there was one in the letter. Just want to Councillor Johnson's, apples and apples and facts are important. There was an allusion to the property in Cole Crescent a couple times. My understanding, there's a couple owners in those buildings, and the building that was evacuated with the fire marshal is not under the ownership of the applicant. So I know that was kind of building part of the case, and I just want to make sure that if there's any way we can kind of clarify the owner of the property that was cited in the letter, I think it's just important to make sure that we do have those facts in front of us before we make a decision. So I don't know if that can be answered now or later. That would be great, but certainly I don't think it doesn't erase the concerns that were raised, but I just want to make sure that we are working with the right information.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor DePlacy. Any other comments? I myself, from the chair here, I did make a few notes here, and Nick, you addressed one. Thank you for that. And I don't want to belabor this, but I guess I'm directing this at Director Rao or maybe Director Shanahan. Sidewalks being brought up by the letter strikes me as odd in that area. Is that something that is in the forecast, or given that it's a school zone? Much the same as we're doing on Percy Kelly Drive in the days and weeks to come?
Deputy Mayor, I guess one thing, there's not a lot of dense housing in that area. I know there's a school in that area. We did widen out the street. I know there's no sidewalk there, but there's, an extra, the shoulder's a little bit wider. So not necessarily there's plans for a sidewalk, no, in those areas, yes and no.
Okay, very good. Manager Mike? Microphone?
If I could, Nick, I understood that currently the applicant doesn't want to rezone part of their property, and that is business light industrial. Is that correct? The area that the roadway goes through?
Right.
But I think you mentioned earlier that he was indifferent to whether it got rezoned?
That's the latest clarification from the applicant.
My question is, if it's not rezoned, he can run businesses on that front end, correct?
It would remain as business light industrial. Any activities permitted would be able to.
If it's all rezoned, what can he do with that property, and can the building stay?
So the building would just be considered an accessory building. His intention is to use it as storage for construction and potentially personal storage ongoing related to maintenance of the apartment. So that could certainly be permitted.
So R4 would eliminate any business use of that building?
Yes.
Okay, that's the first one. Can you pop up the Prac views? Oh, you had them. Yeah. Second page. There's another page to that, isn't there? Or is it? What's that highlighted thing?
It's highlighted because that condition was not a staff recommended condition to the PRAC. That condition was added by the PRAC to their views to be presented to City Council.
Okay. Most conditions council is given are things that the applicant has to do. That is something that council would have to do? And my question is for you, is PRAC not limited to commenting on his property being rezoned?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, in this case, in a lot of ways, it did relate to the file at hand. This wording was the best that staff could do to kind of strike a balance between what was desired by the PRAC and what would be appropriate to present to council. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, leave that up, Nick, if you wouldn't mind. I was going to go back to that as well. Thank you, Manager Mike. I do find that an odd one, if all things fair and equal, that, it's outside of their scope, so to speak. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm okay with that they deal with what's in front of them, not what's down the road in front of them. Is that fair? And I've expressed some frustrations with PRAC. This is not an anti-PRAC thing. I'm just trying to understand here why that's highlighted and brought to our attention.
Yeah, that's correct. Again, I think there is some relevancy to the file at hand. Looking at, as proposed, it would be splitting the zoning of the property. So, that could be considered by council in this particular file.
It's an odd one.
The concern, I guess, would be, from somebody who's going to have to advise council eventually on it, is it doesn't seem to relate to the property.
Right. I agree.
And if that document said, condition 3, hire 4 more planners, is that now a condition? You know, there has to, and I just find it very confusing because it's not consistent with what everything else that comes through as conditions. And we've learned recently, if council doesn't adopt that, it changes the voting weights. So it may be technical, but it's, in the long run, I share the deputy mayor's concerns, and I guess we'll try and deal with that in another forum. Thanks.
Yeah, and apologies, Nick, if that's not appropriate here tonight. You're not on trial or anything. I want to be clear with that. I'm just trying to understand. Councilor Arsenault.
Sorry, late to the party. As all of my colleagues said, I appreciate everyone that took the time to come tonight, and I have a couple of comments, and I don't want anyone to take them as an indication on how I feel about this particular property, but we've gone through a lot of these rezonings in our 2.5-year term, and we know and we hear often how development is needed here. We've worked really hard to spur development, but we also hear every time, but not in my backyard, right? So it makes it very challenging from our perspective to figure out where that fits in our city. You know, I'm very conscious of the fact that we need to have affordable rentals and affordable housing. From my perspective, not at all costs. So, you know, we need to balance all of that on neighborhoods and areas and the things that we see in front of us. It is very concerning from the things I'm just going to go with what I'm seeing right now from pictures. So it is very concerning, but you know, we have to figure out, we as a council, every time one of these rezoning comes up, it can't always be not in my area or not in my neighborhood or not that person. We have to figure out what that balance is, and that it's really tough. There's no question, and so it adds an element, and I can't speak for everybody, but it adds an element for me in my consideration. But I appreciate the fact that everyone shared their concerns. I appreciate actually how the concerns were shared, because it was very compassionate while still getting the point across and very clear. So, you know, we'll have to make that decision. It's unfortunate that the applicant wasn't present because there are some other questions that I would have liked to have asked. But unfortunately, we'll just make the decisions with the information we have in front of us at this point. But you know, moving forward, we as a council have to figure out where it is then, if it's not, you know, here. And again, I'm not stating my desire to build on that particular location or not, but it's always a thought process. If we can't put it there, then where do we put it? Because every time something like this comes up, it's always not in my backyard. So we got to figure out what that next step is.
Thank you, Councilor Arsenault. Councilor DePlacy, I'm going to let you jump in here.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for allowing me to go twice. Thank you, Councilor Arsenault, for that sentiment. The traffic, I know it's been validated that there is traffic concerns, but I'd like to get an opinion through your chair from the engineering department of, like, I know when we talk traffic before, we talk about studying, we talk about traffic numbers, traffic volume. Can you speak to kind of the engineering side of the traffic implications? And I mean, you know, and not to dismiss the concerns at the intersection, you know, there could be correlated concerns or blind spots or whatever it is, but from just an engineering perspective, if you could comment.
Sure, to Councilor DePlacy. So we reviewed some numbers today. The street, Beaverbrook Road, we had some traffic counts over the years, both during the school year and during the summer. You know, the volume's about 700 to 900 cars a day. You know, people think that's a lot of traffic. That's not a lot of traffic in our world. For comparison, that road, you know, a road that would compare to that would be, you know, McKinnon Road, Williston Road, Rainy Road, and those ones are, you know, in excess of 1,200 or 1,300. So it gives you a comparison, you know, of that. So, and that apartment building of, you know, 24 units, if you take everybody did a trip out and back a day, that's, you know, 50 cars, even two with 100 cars. You know, in our world, it's not significant. You know, you talk about the intersection, and I know Mr. Roy talked about the intersection stuff. I think that's a different issue. If there needs to be improvements there, we can look at that. There's a lot of volume on Newcastle Boulevard, so you can look at that as a separate issue maybe. But yeah, in our world, it's not really a lot of traffic.
And I guess to follow up on that, because I know when we had discussed Percy Kelly Drive with the sidewalk concerns, and it was there was a lot of discussion of, does this development, and that was the case there, of that would justify a sidewalk from an engineering perspective. Are we in the similar kind of conversation in that if 24 units were added, does that justify the infrastructure of a sidewalk, or is?
Councillor Placey, fair question. I think it's a use. Is there a number of young families that kids walk to Carrefour Beausoleil, or if they go to that school, go to another school? I think that's something to be monitored down the road. In fairness, I guess. Yeah.
All good. Very good. Thank you, Councillor DePlacy. Our next steps in the process. Thank you, Nick. Sorry, you can grab a seat there. Our next steps in the process here, comments made tonight will be considered by council moving forward. Only those in attendance here this evening that you see before you at this public hearing shall be entitled to vote on third reading and enactment. Council will determine at a special council meeting, and I do address the residents of Beaverbrook Road. That special council meeting is September 12th. In the weeks to come, 2023, again, September 12th. Whether to give second reading by title, reading in entirety, third reading by title, and enactment of bylaw number 109-12 and bylaw number 110-20. Again, thank you for your attendance here this evening, Karen. You were offered some help in getting that email that you want to distribute, so please take the offer